Hey, what is going on, guys, and welcome back to another Genshin Impact video. Today I'm going to be quickly covering XINYAN as a potential physical DPS as a follow-up to my last video. Click the little thingy in the top right if you guys haven't seen that already. And I've also done some testing for Zhongli because a lot of you guys asked for him in the last video, so stick around for that. As always, I want to remind you guys that these calculations were done with no artifact substats, characters were at level 90 with talent levels at 666, and the weapons are level 90 at R1 with their passives active. For XINYAN's combo, we simply did 1E, then ulted, then followed up with 2 charge attack spin to win combos. Now the thing about XINYAN is that her builds vary wildly depending on her constellations. The characters from our previous video don't really change, they just get stronger with constellations. So at Constellation 0, if you use your shield before you ult, it will run out before you can finish both of your charge attack combos, so you do lose the physical damage buff. Also, unless you hit 2 enemies with that 1E, you won't get the dot damage from your shield, which means you can't really use the 4-piece Pale Flame set bonus. And for these combos, I'm testing it versus a single target, so I did not take that artifact set into account, and I did not take into account the level 3 shield. So the best artifact set actually turns out to be 4-piece Bloodstained. However, this does require a kill, and third verse, same as the first in this case. Broken Pines and Wolf's Gravestone are the best options. For 4 stars, Black Cliff is the top damage dealer, however only at 3 stacks. Serpent Spine does slightly less damage, but the conditions to be met are much easier to get to, and you only have Star Silver as your free-to-play option, but it's actually not too far behind Serpent Spine. Unfortunately, you're not going to realistically land the Icicle on an enemy that's affected by Cryo when you're playing XINYAN, so I did not take that extra damage from the passive into account. Anyway, at C0, the highest damage I could see was 4-piece Bloodstained with Wolf's Gravestone, which actually led to a little over 11.2k DPS, which is already generous since I only counted 3 non-shielded attacks. In reality, it will be about 5, so this damage is probably going to be a lot weaker, and the DPS number is probably a lot smaller. Her ult damage on average was only about 23k, which isn't a lot for a so-called nuke ability that costs 60 energy. Now at C2, you can actually use 4-piece Pale Flame since your ult gives you a level 2 shield, which counts as elemental skill damage whenever it damages an enemy, so you can fully stack it. This also extends the duration that you have your shield on you, so you can get off 2 charge attack combos. It was kind of inconsistent, but just for testing's sake, I counted it that way. C2 also guarantees a crit on the physical portion of the ult, which is really good. In this situation, the best set is 4-piece Pale Flames, and Broken Pines actually out-damages Wolf's Gravestone. The 4 stars are the exact same thing, and Skyward is actually not far behind Wolf, but only 10k less damage than Broken Pines, and it does give you more AoE capabilities and energy recharge, which is super valuable on XINYAN. With this buff, her DPS went up to 12.4k, which is still lower than a C2 Razor. At C4, you can get 3 levels on your E from C3, and you also get the physical damage resistance shred on enemies that you hit with your E. Again, Broken Pines actually does more damage than Gravestone in this situation, and this bumps up her DPS to 13.3k, which finally competes with Razor. And at C6, you get a buff to your charge attack, and for some reason, your ult damage as well. It's not listed in the in-game tooltip, but when I ran the numbers, it did seem to increase your ult damage as well as your charge attacks. I don't know if this is a bug, I don't know if I'm just mentally handicapped, or I don't know if they just forgot to include that in the in-game description of the abilities, but I couldn't find anything on the calculator, I couldn't find anything on Honey Hunter, I couldn't find anything on Reddit, so I don't know, but this bumps up her damage to almost 16,000, so it's still very, very good. In conclusion, XINYAN is probably, in my opinion, the worst 4-star for physical main DPS, only if you try to use her as a main DPS, because I do want to make a note about her C2. The builds and artifacts that I used for these tests had no substats, and I did take her charge attacks into account for her DPS. The combo, takes into account her E, the E dot, the ult, and of course all the charge attacks that come into it. But if you only want to use XINYAN for her ult as a nuke, you don't have to care about crit rate at all. You can just stack as much crit damage as humanly possible and just swap to her E for the shred and obviously the physical damage buff, and then ult, and just use her that way in a quick swap comp. This actually gives her a lot more damage and viability and makes her a really decent sub DPS. Obviously, when you take a 10 or 10.5 second combo into account and you are using her charge attacks, which, let's be honest, are just very bad, the DPS is going to be way lower. But if you're only on the field with her for like 2 to 3 seconds and you get a 60k nuke off, then all of a sudden she has like 25,000 DPS or something like that, you know? So when you look at it that way, it's actually pretty damn good. But I highly advise using her as a main DPS, and I would honestly advise not using her at all if you don't have C2. And that is the harsh truth. Now, before I end this video, I just want to quickly go over Zhongli, since so many people asked about him in my last video. I made a quick table with 4-piece Pale Flame on him, and the combo I tested was basically his E, then ult, then normal attack, and then 3 normal attack 5 cancel combos, which takes approximately 10 to 10.5 seconds, not taking into account the time it takes for him to summon his pillar. This gave me a total of almost 130,000 damage, which gives him around 12.3k DPS. However, this doesn't take into account the damage from his E, which you will need to keep up the particle generation for the Crescent Pike procs. I also did some revisions for the Crescent Pike on Rosaria because the damage was just a bit too absurd, so that's why this number might surprise you. But as it turns out, Rosaria's total DPS at C0 is about 13.5k, which is still the strongest among all the 4 stars, and it's actually stronger than Zhongli. And you might ask yourself, how in the hell is that possible when Zhongli feels so good? The reason is because in these calculations and these tests, I'm not taking into account any artifact substats. I'm only taking into account main stats and artifact set effects. So all of those, you know, HP percentage pieces that you have that have a bunch of, you know, crappy subs that are actually pretty good on him will give you a lot more damage than you might think here, versus Rosaria, which is just a traditional DPS that only needs DPS stats, attack percentage, crit damage, crit rate. I mean, he needs those stats as well, but he makes use out of HP too. Also, his auto attacks feel amazing to use, so even if they're not doing a shitload of damage, you might feel pretty damn cool for doing them. Rosaria has much better scaling on her normal attacks in terms of ratio percentages, and she can also give herself crit rate, which is something that you cannot do on Zhongli, so her average damage will be higher if you compare them 1-to-1. Rosaria's abilities also have a much shorter casting time. Her ulti and her E come out pretty fast in comparison to Zhongli, who has a full 4K cinematic when you ult, and of course his E has a huge animation. So all those little things, as well as the fact that, again, we're not taking substats into account, do put Zhongli at a disadvantage. But I do just want to tell you that he is not that bad. He is a support, or he should be played as a sub DPS. He has a bunch of different builds that you can do, and you can still do a lot of damage with him without building him for full DPS. So please don't let this discourage you from trying him out, and if you are enjoying him, then keep on going, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, that's all I got for now. I just wanted to make this as a little follow-up to my last video because I felt it was a little bit inconclusive. And yeah, I hope you guys are having a good weekend, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care.